Welcome to the Trust Factor Radio, bringing you interviews and insights to unlock the power of the subconscious mind to create authority, credibility, and trust. With your host, the Authority Architect and best-selling author, Neil Howe.
Hello and welcome to the show. This is your host, Neil Howe, and today my special guest is Scott Distasio from the Distastio Law Firm. Scott is a personal injury lawyer and he has been practicing law for 29 years. He is a board-certified civil trial lawyer and he helps his clients regain the losses that have incurred as a result of someone else's negligence. And Scott, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Good to be talking with you.
And you're in the Tampa area, is that right?
Yeah, we are. Our main office is in Tampa in the Channel Side district of downtown.
Excellent. Well, Scott, give us a little bit of your background and how you became a trial lawyer and how you started your own firm here.
Sure. I went to law school at the University of Florida, and to tell you the truth, I had no idea that I would end up being a personal injury lawyer. I thought that I was going to go into mergers and acquisitions, and I was studying economics and decided to go to law school. And when I graduated law school, there was a law firm here in Tampa that did medical malpractice defense work. They interviewed me and they made me an offer, and it seemed interesting, so I started doing that. And I was a pretty accomplished medical malpractice defense lawyer for about 10 years before I switched to becoming a plaintiff's lawyer.
Very good. So tell us a little bit about your business now and who it is that you help.
Sure. In 2008, I opened up my own law firm, Distastio Law Firm, to concentrate on representing injured people. And the bulk of our practice involves medical malpractice, nursing homes, car crashes, some slip and fall cases, but always representing the person that is injured in those instances. And we handle those cases from beginning to end. People come to us with their injuries, and if we can demonstrate that those injuries were caused by someone else's negligence, we'll represent them, try and get their case settled. And if that doesn't happen, we take that case all the way through a jury trial.
Well, I'd like to, go through the process of what it's like to, be in that situation, having to contact a lawyer and what that process looks like for your clients. But, first of all, what kind of issues are they looking at or problems are they seeing once they've had an injury?
Sure. And some of it is case dependent, an auto case versus a medical malpractice case versus a nursing home case. I mean, that their injuries are often very different, but what they all have in common is that somebody has caused injury to them. If it's a car crash case or a medical malpractice case, they in addition to their injuries, they may have lost wages. They may not be able to work. They may not be able to find a doctor. And so in nursing home cases, you don't normally have the wage loss component, but you definitely have injuries. And so they come to us basically for bunches of different reasons. Some of them, they just want to get better and they want somebody to pay for their medical expenses and their wages. Some of them, they feel strongly that they want to hold the other person accountable for what's happened to them. And so they call us, we do an intake, and if we feel like what happened to them was as a result of somebody else's wrongdoing, we do an investigation. Is there an ability to recover money on their behalf? Does the person that did wrong or the entity that did wrong, do they have the assets to pay in a case? And if they do, then we sign them up as clients. We take them on a contingency. That means that The client doesn't pay us unless we get a recovery, and we don't get paid unless we get a recovery. We advance costs on their behalf, so we might hire expert witnesses. We might have to pay for medical records. We do that all out of our pocket. And if there's a recovery, we get that back plus our fees. If not, we lose all of it.
Well, that's a great setup and a great system for the client, not having to come out of pocket to cover all your expenses. But it also says that you are very confident in your ability in doing what you do in order to, take on that expense with the outcome of wanting to win that case.
Yeah, and then there's a common misperception in our industry, and I guess some of it because with every misperception there's an element of truth, there's a stereotype, and that misperception is that it's all about the client wanting win the lottery, or the lawyer just trying to make money, and the reality is that nobody I know is going to work for a couple of years for free, advance tens of thousands, sometimes $100,000 on behalf of a client out of their own pocket just to make money. At the end of the day, we have to assess the risk of winning versus losing. And that really kind of shakes out the illegitimate cases and makes it all about getting a recovery for legitimate clients.
All right. Well, let's go through some of these different types of cases to see what you look at, to see if that case is something that you would take or not. Because I think many people say, well, I don't think I have a case here. And that might be one of the reasons that they hesitate contacting somebody like you. So if it's a vehicle accident, what kind of cases are you going to take that you're going to have success with?
Sure. The first thing is what is the client's injuries? There are plenty of car crashes where I'm sore for a couple of days or a week or two, and that goes away. That, unfortunately, that's not something that we can really help out with. On the other hand, you have somebody who their neck or their back is hurting and it's a continuing ongoing injury, broken bones, those types of things. Then we're going to assess from there who caused the accident. If you're injured, but it's your fault, unfortunately, again, nothing that we can do. If it's the other person's fault, then we have to assess, is there an assets to collect? In Florida, the United States, most people have, or most entities have, insurance to cover them. And so if there's insurance available for an individual on the other side, we would take that case. If not, does the driver, the client that's calling us, do they have uninsured motorist coverage? And if so, again, we'll take that case. So those are really the components. Are there injury? Did the other side do something wrong? And is there either insurance or a large corporation that can pay for that wrongdoing?
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about medical malpractice, because this can be something that I think it's one of the leading causes of death. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it might not be for the person who was harmed. It might be the family involved in that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It is one of the larger causes of death in the United States, and a larger cause of injury. But unfortunately, there are a lot of laws in place that basically protect medical providers. They have a very large lobbying group, and the legislature has passed certain protections, at least in the state of Florida, that makes it very hard to pursue a lot of medical malpractice cases. You have to have catastrophic injuries, and then once you have catastrophic injuries, we do an investigation of those cases. We consult with medical experts, and we have to have a medical expert independently of the case review medical records and determine that there was malpractice. And then and only then can we pursue it. And then lastly does the healthcare provider have, again, insurance coverage, or it's a large institution that has assets that would make a recovery possible. And the hardest part is that these cases are extremely expensive. Medical providers in front of a jury win 60 to 75% of the time, because people just think, well, it's a medical judgment that the healthcare provider made a mistake. They didn't do it on purpose. And they tend to give the medical provider the benefit of the doubt. Because of all those things, we have to be very selective in the medical malpractice cases that we take. We will advance $50,000 to $100,000 on behalf of that client in expert costs and court costs, and there's a likelihood it'll go to trial. And with those types of risks involved, it's just, unfortunately, from a business standpoint, working on contingency, we can't take the risk on smaller cases.
Yeah, that is a shame, considering that, there are so many mistakes in the medical field that, needs to be addressed. Not being able to take some of the smaller cases is a bit of a shame there. But one thing that I don't understand myself is elder care abuse. I mean, what goes on in these circumstances? And that's not something I could even imagine.
Yeah, I a substantial part of my career as a defense lawyer was defending nursing homes and long-term care facilities. And quite frankly, the reason that I stopped doing defense work and became a plaintiff's lawyer was because of my experiences doing that. The nursing home industry in the United States is pretty much large corporate chain oriented. And I found myself in defending these cases, defending the indefensible and not really wanting to live with myself. I didn't think that it was worth the money. I didn't feel like I was really helping anyone. I was helping these large institutions deny care to make money. And so I fired all my clients and started as a plaintiff's lawyer. And the main underlying cause of these types of things is not the frontline caregivers. They're generally good quality people that care for the people they're caring for and are trying to do the right thing. The main underlying cause is there's simply not enough staff in these institutions and not enough high level staff in these institutions to provide the care. And so if you think of a corporation that makes products, the more efficient you get, the more you cut costs, the more money you make. But when you're talking about a personal service for individuals, healthcare, when it's the same thing, the most overwhelming cost of that business is the cost of the staff. So if you can cut the pay of the staff by, instead of having a nurse have an LPN, if instead of having an LPN have a nursing assistant, you keep reducing the level of care, you pay less, you save costs. Also, if you should have 4 staff members on duty, instead you have 2, you save costs. Well, when you're talking about healthcare, what that means is there's just simply not enough care to go around. So the staff doesn't have enough time to turn and reposition people who may be laying in one position for too long. The staff doesn't have time to answer call bells for residents who then get up and fall. When the residents aren't turned and repositioned, they develop pressure sores. There's just a whole litany of things that happen in these institutions that are directly related to corporate decisions to make more money. And I'm all for making profit. I'm an entrepreneur. I own my own business. I support my staff and I try to make as much money as possible. But at some point, when you're dealing with individuals' lives, you gotta make sure that there is enough care. And I think that some of these corporate institutions simply don't. The bottom line is more important.
Yeah, that's a shame. And, looking into that myself recently, I know that staying in these facilities is not cheap. It tends to be very expensive, but I guess they're still looking to cut costs in some way.
Yeah.
How about pharmacy malpractice? Is that very common?
It is, but it leading to injury is not as common. So there are millions upon millions of prescriptions filled every day in the United States, and there's an error rate that allows for people to get the wrong medicine or get the wrong dose of medicine. And oftentimes it doesn't cause harm. It's caught by the person, or, the wrong medicine doesn't cause the person harm. And so a lot of those never get pursued. But on the other hand, there's a small percentage that medication overdose or the wrong medicine could cause substantial damage. And from a statistical standpoint of the number of prescriptions, it's small, but from an overall volume, it's a large number of cases, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Well, we talked about some of the misconceptions already. You said that, a misconception is that clients are just out to maybe win the lottery and get a big payout, but that's, not what they're looking for. What other misconceptions are there surrounding the personal injury business?
Sure. The common label is ambulance chaser, that we're just greedy lawyers out to make as much money as possible. And of course we want to make money, but as I said earlier, I don't know anybody who's going to work for a couple of years and invest tens of thousands of dollars on the hope that they're going to win if they don't really believe that the person that they've harmed, that was harmed, deserves compensation, and they don't believe that there was actual negligence. Because you lose one of these things, you can lose a lot of money. And so at the end of the day, sure, there are some lawyers that may be bringing cases they shouldn't bring, but for the most part, in my experience, that's because those lawyers don't have enough experience to realize it's not a good case. It's not because they're just trying to blackmail somebody into paying money, because I got to tell you, it's not a very good way to make that happen.
Mm-hmm. And as far as, the costs of personal injury lawyers, do they cost the economy by getting these massive payouts that we hear about?
Again, that's another common misperception. There are lobbying groups that put out these white papers that try and claim that personal injury law is a tax on society. And what they do is they add up all the costs, the cost of the defense lawyer, the cost of the expert witnesses, the cost of the payout, and then they claim that's somehow a tax on the economy. But what they're failing to do is value the benefits. Think of a company like Apple. If you just look at the cost to run Apple, it might be in the billions of dollars, you would say, oh my God, that's an awful company that's going to go out of business. On the other hand, if you look at all the revenue they bring in, and it's tens of billions of dollars more than those costs, you say, wow, that's one of the most successful companies ever. And so when you're valuing personal injury to the economy, you have to include the benefits. I mean, I'm employing a whole staff. The defense lawyer is employing a whole staff. Expert witnesses are getting paid. All of those things are benefits. But even if you don't count those benefits versus costs and look at what's really happening, it's a transfer of wealth from the person that caused harm to the person that was injured. If that transfer of wealth doesn't happen, the injured person has lost wages. They may not be able to work in the future. they become a drain on society. And who pays? Taxpayers do. So that's the first avenue of why it's actually a benefit to the economy. We're getting these people back up into society to the best we can. We're getting them the health care they need. And when they can't get back into society, we're providing them a way to take care of themselves that otherwise would be paid by the taxpayers. But the other thing is, at the end of the day, when a settlement occurs or a verdict is reached, that verdict or settlement includes money for medical expenses. If those medical expenses were paid by health insurance, Medicare, Medicaid, or workers' comp, we by law have to pay back the health insurance out of the settlement of the verdict, or the Medicare or the Medicaid or the workers' comp. We have to pay that back. So in my book, that's actually lowering the cost of health care. So that's how I look at it. And I think in reality, that's how it really is. It's a net win for the economy.
Very good. Well, Scott, obviously there's so many instances where people get injured and they need help. Walk me through the process of what that looks like in your office. What's the best way to contact you? Is it just to pick up the phone and start that conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have some clients that contact us through our website at distastiofirm.com, and we have a contact form and they can fill it out. But ultimately, there needs to be a phone call because, on paper, things don't come through. So ultimately, there's a phone call, and we have intake staff that handle the initial conversation, take down all of the information about what happened. We have a review process to say, is this a case or isn't it? And if the conclusion is it a case, then we invite the potential client to come into the firm, or we'll go out to them, get them signed up as a client. And if they want to speak directly to me at that point in time when we've agreed to take the case, that happens either in person or over the phone, if it's whatever their choice is. Many clients, quite frankly, given the internet and the ability to reach far, they may be geographically far from us in Florida, and we may do everything over the phone or through a Zoom or a Skype connection. So that's how the process works initially. And then once we get the client signed up, we gather their medical records. We gather any information about their event. If it's a car crash, the accident report. We may hire private investigators to do some background information. And after we've done that, we're comparing to what the client said to the information we've gathered. And if it's still a case, then we move forward. If it's not, there's times when we say, okay, we've done that investigation. Things are a little different than we thought. Unfortunately, we can't help. But those cases where we have determined after that investigation that we can help, we'll put a package together to make a claim. We'll identify where to get that package to the other side, and we'll attempt to negotiate a settlement. If that doesn't work, then we file a lawsuit, and we start what's called the discovery process, which means we exchange written information with the other side. We take depositions, which is putting someone under oath with a court reporter there and asking them questions. We may have expert witnesses then review all of this material and render opinions. We'll pay those expert witnesses to do that. And then we'll try to settle the case again at that point. If the other side is still not interested in doing that, we'll have the case set for jury trial and we'll go in front of a jury.
And I imagine that takes all different lengths of time from, fairly quickly, a few weeks maybe, to, even a few years.
Absolutely. It's dependent on two things. How good of a case it is from the defense's perspective. In other words, it's obvious there was wrongdoing and there's obvious that there's injury. Those cases are gonna resolve much quicker. And then the other issue is the complexity of the case. If you're talking about a complicated medical malpractice case, those just don't resolve quickly. You can't really know and understand those cases until you put people under oath. The nurses, the doctors, they have to put our clients under oath. And so those tend to require lawsuits and, lengthy litigation process that absolutely can last a couple of years.
And as far as there's a lot of cases, there's a lot of people that go and see personal injury attorneys, but there's probably a lot more that have fears about taking that first step. What kind of fears hold some people back from getting the help that they need and deserve?
Yeah, absolutely. No, the first and foremost is not so much a fear; it's a mindset, a belief system, and there's a lot of, and I'll call it propaganda. Other people might call it lobbying in the public, but there's a lot of information put out by large institutions that it's wrong to bring a personal injury case, that you should be responsible for whatever happened to you. And, about a third of the population believes that. And so they just sit and suffer and say, well, this happened to me. It's an accident and I should take responsibility. And what I say to those people is, why should you take responsibility for someone else causing you harm when they were negligent? Why shouldn't they take responsibility for what they've done? They caused these injuries. They caused you to lose work. Why shouldn't they be responsible? If you break a glass, you offer to pay for it. Why in personal injury is this misconception, this belief that that's wrong? I just don't understand it. So that's the first thing. And I think the second thing is that some people, they just are fearful of the process. They know it takes a long time. They know they might have to be deposed and put under oath, and they don't want to put themselves out there in that format. And the defense knows that, and they try to take advantage, and they try to wear people down, and they try to delay cases, and that's often why things take so long, which then feeds back into the fear that the client may have. I just want to give up. I don't want to go through that process. And that's why they need an advocate on their behalf. And if they come to our law firm, we don't back down. We pride ourselves on, if we make a commitment to a client, we're going to take it all the way. And we feel like we have the reputation with the other side. They know that. And as a result, that ends up making our cases resolve quicker.
Well, I know within the church and the Bible, they say that you're supposed to go to your brother and try and work it out. And if that doesn't work, they're supposed to, find somebody else and then go to the church. But in this day and age, does that work anymore?
Yeah, and I think that's a perfect analogy. And it's often the very religious people who are the most hesitant. And I just don't understand it, because you're right. I mean, I think the Bible does speak to when you cause harm, you step up to the plate and do the right thing. And so I don't think the church provides that avenue anymore. And I think that the only way that you're going to be able to hold the other side accountable when they're not willing to do it, when they don't step up and volunteer, is to go through this process. And, while it does happen, I've seen from time to time, people that have caused harm or corporations that cause harm voluntarily step up and do the right thing. It's pretty rare in today's society. The only way to make that happen is to go through a personal injury lawyer.
Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, there's lots of personal injury lawyers out there, Scott. If somebody does have a case and needs to contact one, what are some of the questions that they should be asking to make sure that they are dealing with the right personal injury lawyer?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. There is a lot of advertising. And especially in our industry, I'm the best. I've got this credential or that credential. Come hire. Let me be your lawyer. And I think that there's nothing wrong with that kind of advertising, but I think the consumer needs to look behind it and see, is it just puffing? And what they need to look for is, first and foremost, does that lawyer specialize in that area? Does that lawyer exclusively handle those types of cases? Because there's a lot of lawyers that will say they do a particular type of case, but in reality, they don't have a whole lot of experience. So what is that lawyer's experience in handling those types of cases? And then has that lawyer handled cases from beginning to end? There are a lot of personal injury lawyers that are, quite frankly, settlement mills. They're businesses, and they just take cases in and attempt to get them settled. You want a lawyer that has trial experience and knows and understands the courtroom, not because your case is going to go in front of a jury. 90 to 95% of cases settle, but because having that experience tells the other side your lawyer will go to the mat for you. That actually helps you get your case settled quicker and for more value. And then the last thing is, look for independent sources of verification. In today's society on the internet, it's pretty easy to Google somebody's name and see what's out there. Do they have 5-star Google reviews like our law firm does? What are other professionals saying about them on LinkedIn or AVO or other ranking sites? Are they board certified trial lawyer? Do they have an AV rating from Martindale-Hubbell, lawyers.com? Those independent sources of verification then help you verify all of the things that you're hearing and about that person.
Excellent. Well, Scott, this has been very helpful. I think we've covered a lot of information for people that do need help and are listening. If there's anything that we haven't really covered today, but you'd like to leave before we go, what might that be?
Yeah, I think if you're struggling out there, you feel like somebody's harmed you, and you have medical expenses, lost wages. Call a personal injury lawyer and get their advice. It doesn't cost anything. The consultation's free. And, maybe there's nothing that can be done. But if there is, don't hesitate. Don't let that belief that there's somehow wrong to do that hold you back, because at the end of the day, the other person caused this and they should be the one to be responsible for what happened.
Very good. Now, if people want to reach out to your law firm personally, Scott, what is the best way for them to do that?
Sure. They can give us a call at 813-259-0022, or they can send us an email at info@distastiofirm.com.
Well, excellent. Scott, thank you very much for being my guest. This is Scott Distasio from the Distastio Law Firm in Tampa, Florida. It's been a pleasure speaking with you today.
Good to speak to you too, Neil.
And to our listening audience, if you like what you hear, hit that like button and share, and we'll see you next time on the show.
You've been listening to the Trust Factor Radio with Neil Howe. To learn about the resources mentioned in the show and to listen to past episodes, go to thetrustfactorradio.com. To get a copy of the book, The Trust Factor, go to thetrustfactorbook.com. If you are ready to act now and build your authority, credibility, and trust, schedule a consultation with Neil at theauthorityarchitect.com.